Really excited to have my next guest on the podcast. He's a senior VP of development at Wesgroup Properties. Welcome to the podcast, Brad Jones.
Thanks very much, Joe.
Really excited to have you on the pod. So let's just jump right into it. How about you let the listeners know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, as you said, I'm SVP Development at Wesgroup Properties, so I oversee the development, sales, and marketing activities for Wesgroup, which is a family-owned real estate company in Western Canada, one of the largest private real estate organizations in Western Canada, primarily focused in the Lower Mainland. So we're active in basically every submarket here in all asset classes, industrial, residential, rental, residential condo, and really specialize in building mixed use communities as well.
Awesome. And I've noticed that through my research, I've noticed that you've had some positions within the development aspects of Wesgroup. Perhaps you can let the listeners know how you got to your current role.
Yeah, for sure. So my background's actually in urban planning, and as I went through school, I pretty quickly realized I didn't really want to do the kind of traditional government urban planning job. I was really more interested in I I want to probably a bit of a control freak. So I want to control what actually happens, not kind of plan for what happens. So I thought real estate development was a really cool meld of that skill set, and so was always interested in that. Grew up in Ontario, moved out here after school just to do something different, and so I worked for a smaller developer in the Lower Mainland for a number of years. Cut my teeth there, got a ton of really good experience with a good team of people, and then moved over to West Group, I think almost 8 years ago now, primarily interested in, A, kind of scaling up what I was working on in sort of size and complexity, but B, came over to work on and take the lead on a master plan community in Vancouver called the River District, which is basically a city that we're building within Vancouver that'll be, 18,000, 19,000 people at its completion. And so it's a mix of, every cool part of urban planning, land development, real estate development, asset ownership, all of that. And so that was like the perfect little playground for my brain. So that's what led me to West Group. And then, from there, just kind of taken, more and more scope of the development side on. And then in the last few years, picked up the sales and marketing pieces. And so, really kind of, soup to nuts of real estate development involved from, looking at acquisitions and what makes sense for us to get into all the way through how are our communities functioning, what's the right retail mix to put in, things like that.
Mm. It's funny. I saw you guys' tagline is "We see potential," and definitely reading through some of the projects West Group has been a part of. I mean, 7,000 homes and over 100 communities. But what's maybe perhaps something that West Group does that many people don't know about?
I think the biggest thing I would say is the focus on true community building. So a big part of the we see potential piece is the family ownership and kind of direction setting of the company is incredibly long-term thinking. And so it's not one project cycle out, it's 10 project cycles out. And so that gives you the ability to think in a much different way. And so when we go in and do these master plan communities like River District, Brewery District, and we've got two more in the works, called Coronation Park in Port Moody, and then another one in Surrey. We're really thinking from day one, what's going to make this community work? How are people going to interact in it, way beyond when we're finished? And really, what if we live there, what would we want? And so my favorite example to kind of put that in perspective is down at the River District. We run an apiary and we sell jars of honey from our apiary. We have a beekeeper that works down there, and we have a colony. It grows and recedes, but of in the 400,000 to 500,000 bee capacity, which sounds like a lot to me. And we end up donating all the proceeds from the honey that we generate and sell back to a local family place organization that does parenting support and childcare and kind of some basics like that. And so that's my favorite sort of soft touch point of kind of the things that we look at when we're doing some of these communities.
Absolutely. Speaking of communities, I kind of want to touch on the Vancouver market a bit. Obviously,
Yeah.
with the economic conditions we're facing these days, and Yeah, I'm just curious, what's your perspective on Vancouver's current real estate landscape?
It's really weird times right now. We've been through a period where asset values were increasing in an environment where we had, historically an incredibly low interest rates for a fairly long period of time. And so things are funny right now. There's a lot of just stagnancy because it's hard to make financial decisions. So you've got rising interest rates is changing the investment climate. Either for purchasing a home or looking at land or looking at buying an existing asset. But the fundamentals remain the same from a supply and demand perspective, which is the funny part, right? Nothing's changed about Canada's got a significant amount of immigration. A significant component of that moves to BC. A significant component of that moves to the Lower Mainland. And so there's this supply and demand constraint that exists in our marketplace because of limited land, mountains, agricultural land reserve, the ocean. And there's an unending amount of people that are moving here, and we're not building enough homes. And so you'd think that would create a market that just doesn't stop, but the interest rate piece and the inflation piece is really slowing it. And so it's in a really weird place right now where we believe uh, fundamentally this is an incredible market to be in because of those constraints. But the short term and short term outlook right now is a thing that's hard to predict, but it just feels like it's going to be slow.
In terms of, I mean, we've touched on some of the challenges, but for you, I always love to ask my guests, what does success look like to you, whether it be professionally or personally?
Joe, that is a loaded question. I find the work that we do really rewarding. The kind of core basics of it, we get to do things that are really cool. I get to go out on the weekends with my kids and go have a coffee in a plaza that we've built in a master plan community. That's pretty cool, right? Not a lot of jobs you can go sit in something that you helped create. So that part's really neat. I think as I've progressed, it becomes the most rewarding is there's so many people involved in everything we do. One single project that we work on has, hundreds, if not thousands of individual people that touch it and play a part in it. And these are, relationships that you end up having for years or decades with people as you work through some of these big complicated things, and having that kind of mutual payoff at the end is so cool. And I think if you can get through some of these big complex things, and have everybody be happy at the end of it, it's really rewarding. And it's that's the approach we take and that I take is we're here for the long term, and how we do business is really important to us. And so if we finish something off or hit a milestone, and all of the folks on the city side or the government side that we dealt with and all of our team are happy and all of the people that we're building it are happy, that's one of the coolest things to me.
Right. It sounds like creating those win-win-win scenarios.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's something that you're going to keep doing this again and again, and you want to be a place that and a person that people want to do it with you, because it's not always easy, and it's not without its complexity, and working through that with people that you trust and can work through challenges with and have healthy conflict with is it's a great environment to work in.
Hmm. Speaking of complexity, what's maybe a common misconception about real estate or even real estate development that you wish would be debunked?
Ooh, how long do we have? uh, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that the one line about real estate developers is they're greedy and they make way too much money. And I don't think you've ever seen a movie where there's like a good guy real estate developer, right? They're always the bad guy. They're always the evil in the plot. And so, but the reality is that almost every home anyone lives in an urban area in Canada, in North America, the land was bought and developed by a real estate developer, and the home they live in was either sold to a home builder or built by the developer too. And so I think it's hard being kind of an agent of change, that you end up getting that bad rap. And the other piece is, real estate development's tough. The to do it, you're taking huge amounts of risk. A lot of our projects, when we buy a piece of land, just to turn one building over is a 7-year venture, right? To get your money back out of it. And so there's a lot of things that can go on through that period of time, a lot of risk that you're taking on. I mean, think about how much the real estate market moves over a 7-year period, and interest rates and lumber and steel and copper and aluminum wire and glass and all of these things. So it's fraught with risk, and it's challenged by, incredible levels of bureaucracy. And when you look at the return on an annualized basis, sometimes you might ask yourself why we're even in the business. And so it's something that, in terms of the risk payoff, sometimes it's getting harder and harder in the industry. But at the same time, what would you do without real estate developers that are ready to take that risk and do that, right?
Absolutely. For what it's worth, I don't think you're a villain, Brad, and I think you're a good guy. Speaking of which, I actually saw that you're giving back to the community, and I'm really impressed by the initiatives you're a part of. I think you're the founder of the Golf Pledge. Perhaps speaking more about that, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. It's a tiny little venture that me and two friends started during the pandemic, actually playing a lot of golf. Got pretty good at doing AirPod golf with calls going on. We just were spending a lot of time together walking the golf course. We've all got, young families, and we're talking about, golf's pretty expensive, and there's golf camps, and generally just the affordability challenge in our world right now. Families struggling to put their kids into hockey and golf and all of these different things. And so we got talking about it, and led down a path of, we each of us could afford to pay, $5 more for this round of golf, full stop, right? And so what if we just started trying to make that a normal thing? Every time you come out, you put $5 into a jar, and you donate that to help some kids, go to a golf camp in the summer, or buy equipment or do something like that. And so it started just like that, and we started it by kind of talking to some friends and just doing that. And so we aligned ourselves with a Golf Canada initiative called First Tee, which goes into underprivileged communities, and just does golf curriculum in schools, in community centers, and things like that, just to introduce people to the game. It's an interesting game where you learn to be accountable to yourself, and you learn to keep your own score, and you learn to be honest and be polite and have etiquette. And whether they, play golf the rest of their life or not, that's not the point. It's, physical activity and those life lessons. So we try to do, one or two things every year to raise a bit of money. And we're not talking about huge dollars. It's really a passion project just to put into that exact thing. And then we're also looking at working with a group now that does 2-week summer camps at a golf course in Vancouver. And they do it for kids that are growing up in the downtown east side in Vancouver, which is a really high poverty community. And so they bring them on a bus every day, feed them for the day, put them through, sports activities and all of that. And it's just a huge moment in those kids' lives. And so we're trying to just have that really tangible impact by doing that through a game that we really enjoy playing.
Absolutely, and I'm still trying to get my swing in the right direction, so I
It's
might
a
have to.
constant chase, isn't
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I only have a couple more questions here for you, Brad, before I jump out of here, but, I'm always curious what my guests are curious about, so, yeah, what is Brad curious about these days?
Oh, there's a lot. I think I'm really curious about supply chain right now on the kind of work curiosity side. I think the biggest thing we learned about COVID is that I don't know that any industry really understood how its supply chain worked. And so that's just an incredibly interesting thing. And I'm trying to look at, and we've got a market intel team here that I oversee as well. And instead of looking at, what's a condo selling for, we're starting to look at, well, when steel was selling for this in the global commodity market, what did we buy it for, and how did that work? And so we're starting to try to understand things like that. And so I find my night reading is following these like couple weird supply chain Twitter accounts that tell me that, there's a log jam with barges in a river somewhere. And I'm like, okay, I wonder what that's going to affect. So I found the supply chain piece really, really interesting. And then probably on the personal side, listening to just various psychology podcasts. I think a partly probably because I think I'm crazy, but B, I'm just really curious about how people place themselves on a political spectrum, and what are the things that lead to that, and how does our education contribute to kind of our worldview over time. And so I've just kind of found my way down a path listening to some things that I found really interesting that way.
It's interesting. Another question I'm always interested about asking my guests is, and maybe it's a loaded question as well, but what's maybe one question that you never get asked that you wish you would be asked?
I was asked one recently, and it's a bit of a throwaway question. It feels like sometimes, but I think it caught me off guard. But I liked my answer. Was, what's one of the biggest lessons you've ever learned? And it's a version of know your enemy, but I don't like the phrasing of that because you're not always dealing with an enemy. You're dealing with somebody that you're a counterpart with, right? And whether that's positive or negative, it kind of doesn't matter. I think the message is still the same: is understand who you're dealing with, what motivates them, what are they worried about, what are they trying to protect against, what opportunities are they interested in, what gets them up in the morning. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned in real estate development is I've got a planning background, so I'm a zoning nerd and I like reading about setbacks and things like that. That's just the subject matter, right? Like that's kind of the basics. Someone's going to figure that out, and it's important to understand, but it always comes back to people, and you're interacting with so many people all the time. And so I just think that kind of conscious curiosity of trying to understand what motivates people is a really interesting thought in life.
Hmm. On that note, what's your prime motivator? Like, what gets Brad out of the bed in the morning?
uh, I like being challenged. I like things that are really tough and hard, and so um, I you know I'm not super interested in kind of going off on my own and doing small projects or anything like that. I like stuff that's hard and complicated and hard to sort out, and I really like being in a team environment, and so that really gets me out of bed in the morning is kind of thinking about that hard stuff. And it's usually the shower thoughts or the brushing your teeth thoughts that make you're thinking about something a different way than you might have the day before. I love that. I like when things are tough and hard to sort through, and I think the real estate development industry gives me lots of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it always builds resilience just getting used to doing hard things.
Yeah.
It builds that kind of confidence and, yeah, resilience.
And you end
Um,
up, you get like the confidence piece is key because you figure them out, and so then you have the confidence you're going to figure the next one out and the next one out, and so it's a cool thing when you start getting that momentum. And then where I'm at now, it's like kind of guiding people through that themselves now too, right?
I love that. What's maybe something you're proud of that we haven't touched on in the interview so far?
I think I've got a really good team here that I've in some ways inherited and some ways created, and I think I continue to and have had the ability to learn from really great leaders. And I have adopted a mentality where I think, I'm trying to bring people up through our organization that scare me, that I think might be better at what I do than I am. And I think that's a really cool approach to it. And I learned that from my leader. And it's a great thing because then you start kind of taking that on. It's like, how do I make these people better at this than I think I am? And so it becomes a really cool project. And so in terms of being proud of it, kind of moving through the business, and I'm in other parts of it, and I see things that I used to be involved in happen without me. That's not scary anymore. That's just cool. And so I like that. And at some point, I probably will have nothing left to do.
I love that. I love that. Where can our listeners connect with you online?
That was the question here that scared me the most. I don't know. I try to be pretty quiet online, but LinkedIn, I guess.
Okay, LinkedIn. I'll put that in the links, guys. Go reach out if
I
you have
stay
any
pretty low
questions.
tech. My Instagram's private, and it's just basically golf pictures that my wife doesn't care if I share with her. So
That works. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, Brad.
for
I'm sure the
sure. Thanks
listeners
very
had a
much.
ton of great insight from you. I love to end the interview with one last question. And since it's a leadership podcast, what does being a leader or leadership mean to you?
I think it was kind of my last answer. Look at people that you're leading and try to make them better than you. Hi, I'm Brad Jones, and you're listening to the Joe Momoh Presents.
thanks again for watching the Joe Momoh Presents podcast. For more episodes, check out joemomo.com/podcasts. All right, see you next time.